So let us jump right into that. Let me tell you what I have for you today. I would like to first give you a general overview of the MAXQDA user interface so we can talk about where you can find different features of the software. And then I would like to talk to you about 6 steps on writing your thesis with MAXQDA and how the program can support you in any stage of your research project. So first, we're going to talk about collecting and importing your data, so how you can gather all information that is connected to your project and put them into MAXQDA to start your analysis. Then we are going to talk about data exploration, how you can find emerging patterns in all the information you connected. Then we will talk about developing your research question and your hypothesis, so how to structure and how to get some exciting information out of the data you gathered. Then we are going to talk about analyzing your material, so how you can get and emerge deeper into your data and get some important new insights on that. And then we will also talk about how you can gather these insights together and structure that. And we will finish our webinar today by talking about how to report your findings. So what I planned for today is to give you an overview of how MAXQDA can support you throughout the entire project. I will talk for about 45 to 50 minutes, and then we will have enough time to talk about your questions at the end. So every time you have some questions, you can put them in the chat for me, and I will get back to these questions right at the end of our conversation, so that we can collect them, and then I will answer them all together. So let's jump right into it. So as I already mentioned, this is MAXQDA. This is the user interface that you can see. And I am on a Windows machine right now, but MAXQDA is entirely identical on both Mac and Windows. So if you are a Mac user, this is the exact same functionality that is available to you, and this is the exact same layout how you can find these features in. If you open the program, you can see a 4 windows layout. So you have these 4 different sections of your screen, and you can find a ribbon on the top. This is a standard. This is quite a standard ribbon, so it might be familiar for you from other applications. And what is interesting about it is that it follows the logic of a research project. So first in the Home tab, it talks about functions that are specific, that are not specific, but are related to your entire project. Then we have a tab called Import, where you can find all the import features what you have. So all about how to get MAXQDA, how to get information into the software. Then we have some specific project elements talking about code. So those are analytical categories in MAXQDA. Memos, those are your memos. These are your thoughts, your notes on it. Then it talks about variables, that are attributes that you can assign to your documents, about analysis features, mixed methods features, visual tools, and then it ends with reporting and with the additional modules. So the 4 windows that you can see, those have different functions. First, you can have one that shows all the documents that are imported into your project. MAXQDA is a database software. That means that every information, every data that you are planning to analyze first have to be imported into your project, and then that is available in your project database, and then you can start analyzing it. So every information that you would like to analyze here, first you have to import it. First you have to get them into your project. Then the second window, what you can see is the document browser. This will display your documents later on. The third window is the code system, which will display you your codes, your main analytical categories in MAXQDA. And the fourth window is the retrieve segments window that you will, where you will be able to find the results of your coding and of your analysis. I will close it for a second, and as we will be talking about other features first. But if you go to the Home tab, you can find here the settings for the four windows, and you can switch them on and off every time. You can also rearrange the position of these windows if you would like to, depending on your screen or monitor situation that you have set up. So, how can we get information into MAXQDA? I have some. So when you are starting writing your thesis, when you are thinking about starting a project, the very first step of the project is that you start gathering data. What information is available to the topic what you are working on? That could be primary information. That would be secondary information. For example, something about the scientific literature on that topic. And you can work with all sorts of different information in MAXQDA. You can find all in the import tab. So here you can find the features. You can find the specific features to all the type of documents that you can import to the software. I have prepared some documents for us. I would like to show you how to work with MAXQDA on the example of a small research project on work-life balance. And what I'm especially interested in is how people perceive happiness based on their work-life balance, how they are structuring their time between work, between family, between self-care, and how that impacts their general well-being. And I have gathered some information on that topic. I have made some interviews with people talking about their work situation, talking about how they are managing their time with their families, how they are managing childcare, etc. Then I have also gathered some secondary literature on talking about on the topic of work-life balance and happiness. I also took some pictures, and I also recorded a video interview. So, how can I get this information into MAXQDA? It is quite easy by just simply drag and dropping files into the software. So let's say here I have my interviews. I can just simply select them and drag and drop into my document system. And as you can see, MAXQDA immediately reads them in as documents. If I double click on them, they open in the document browser, and now I can start reading my interviews. I can also have here in the document browser multiple tabs open, so that I can also switch back and forth between different documents and read them simultaneously if I would like to. That is one way to get information into MAXQDA, by simply drag and dropping it. However, there are also some, there is also the option to import them directly from the import ribbon here. So if I would like to import this information, I could also simply navigate to that here through my browser here. I could also use the assigned import features to import documents together with an audio information. So let's say I'm not only have the transcript of an interview I prepared, but I also have the audio file with that. If I would like to import them all together, I also have the appropriate feature available for me to import transcript with timestamps and import them together with the audio material as well. So I can find this feature here under transcripts in the import tab. I don't have any transcripts right now, so let me just also get the rest of my interview partners here by drag and dropping. I also have the option to import multimedia data, for example, images or audio or videos here. I also have some images prepared, so I will show you how that works here. Let me just navigate to my file. Here are my images. I can select them. And here, as you can see, they are also displayed here in the document browser now. They are also opening by simply double-clicking on them. And I could now do the same with a video, just simply clicking on importing videos, and then MAXQDA can import that as well. It also asked me if I would like, if I have a transcript for that, and if I would like to import them together. So I also have that option available for me. And video files are a bit of a difference. They are an exception to the rule of opening in the document browser. They are opened in a separate window in the multimedia browser that makes it possible for me to view the media file as well, and also to work directly on the video file. So now I have all sorts of different information here. What can I do with it? So in order for me to structure this information, I can also use folders and create document groups in MAXQDA by simply hitting a new document group. I can create a folder and I can assign it a name. So let's say I would like to now collect all my interviews in a folder so that I get a better overview of the type of data that is available for me. Then I can create this folder, and now I can reorganize my document system by simply drag and dropping elements onto this folder. It's also possible to have different subfolders. So if I would like to record some more information on maybe where I recorded these interviews, I could also have multiple levels of subfolders. So let's say I recorded some interviews in Berlin, but I also recorded some in Hamburg. Then I could just have the information here and rearrange my document system by, again, just dragging and dropping my interviews on the appropriate place. I can of course also have different types of documents in this folder. So I could also have a video and a text file. That is not a problem at all, so that I can arrange them flexibly as I would like to. As an additional element of organization, I can also add notes on that. These notes are called memos in MAXQDA. So if I would like to record the information on where what these documents are, I can also do that, and I could add a note. This is sort of like a sticky note. This is where the symbol also comes from, and say that these are my interviews. So we can really use these memos very flexibly, record all sorts of information you would like to. Okay, so now we have some data. This is not all the type of data that you can work with in MAXQDA. As you can see, there are all sorts of different additional import features as well. So we could also work with focus groups in MAXQDA or with the survey data, with Twitter data, like social media data from Twitter or from YouTube. There is also a web picker that is available to you. That is a extension for Google Chrome that you can download from the for your browser, and that allows you to import documents directly from the web. You could also import secondary literature if you are using a reference management software, for example, Citavi, EndNote, or Mendeley, and you could import bibliographic data from these softwares directly or from an RIS file. Just a little note on what makes more sense using drag and dropping or a special import features. If you are working with simple files, for example, if you are working with text files or video files that are just showed to you, you can just simply use drag and dropping. If it's a file which is more complex, for example, Twitter data, then you have to go through these special import features, as it allows you to then connect to Twitter and also autocode some of your data. I will just show you in a second how these import features, how the result of these import looks like later on. But now I would like to go to the second step of our analysis. So after having imported our data and pre-organized it into these different folders, we can start exploring that. And we have different options for the file exploration. So we can, of course, do it in a slow manual way by just going through our documents and reading them. So here we have an interview with David, and then now we could go ahead and start reading it to get to see what are the emerging themes in this interview, what David was saying to us about his work-life balance and his happiness. While doing that, we have different ways to record informations on these interview, and one of that would be to start coding. And coding is the process of assigning analytical information and to assigning categories to a certain segment of your documents. So let's say we are reading this interview and we are finding that David starts talking about his typical workday. So he gets asked a question. First of all, I would like to ask you to describe how a typical workday goes for you. And then he goes ahead and explains to us that when then he wakes up and then he starts checking his phone. He has breakfast with his family, and then he goes to work. So now we could just highlight this information, right-click on it, and say that we would like to record it as a new code. So we would like to code this information with the code typical workday, and as this is the topic what he's talking about, we could assign it a color, which is pretty interesting as it gets used later on in the visual tools in MAXQDA. So we can just switch back and forth between different colors. We could assign it a memo as well. So again, these sticky notes, what you could see me apply here in the folders as well. We could give it a memo. I always recommend to add a memo every time you are creating a new code, where you record the code definitions. So what is this code talking about? Why it makes sense for your research to have a code like this, and what is your purpose by creating it? So here you could record this definition. You could even add a comment on the coded segments. So that is something that is analytically different from the memo, as the memo applies to the entire code, and the comment applies only to this connection of the code and the coded segment. So first you are talking about in the code memo why you created this code. So what is it talking about? In the comment, you are talking about why it makes sense to having it applied here. So here, David talks about his typical workday, but I could also add a question here. So for example, does it make sense? Does that have anything to do with his typical workday? Is he maybe he then starts going to talk about something else? Maybe it's unclear. Maybe I would like to follow up on that, or I need to think about maybe it belongs to another category. So I could also record that here. And if I hit OK, the following thing happens. So MAXQDA creates the code typical workday here in my code system. This blue code, so the typical workday code, is now also applied here in my document. So I can now see that this is assigned a bracket. So here is the coding. We can read that, and we can also see that our code definition was recorded here in a memo, and we also have our code comment appearing here on the side of the document. So we have all these information now connected to the segment what we were looking at. When we continue reading our document, we could also continue coding with this code. So maybe David continues to talk about his typical workday. Then we could continue coding with that, or we could record that he is now talking about another topic and just go ahead, repeat the whole process, and create a new code again. So let's say now he's talking about working. And we could then slowly read through our interview, develop analytical categories, really think about what this interview partner talks about, what are the themes emerging from my data here. If there are some other ways of coding in MAXQDA. So if I am, for example, not entirely sure what specific topic a part of my interview talks to, what is this about exactly, I could also just start coding with the highlighter tools. As you are exploring your data, I usually highly recommend using them just to start familiarizing yourself with it. So let's say this is a section which is interesting and I would like to come back later on. I could just highlight that red or with any color I pick, and not having to name that. Or even I could add a meta code, and I could say, well, I could rename this code and say, well, red codes are something that I have to revisit at some point again, and I should come back and talk more about. I could also code with emojis. So let's say I would like to record that here. I remember my interview partner was smiling at me while he was talking about that. So maybe he made a joke, or maybe that was something that I would like to remember from the interview situation itself. So I could also record this information. There is not only a manual way to code data, but you can also make this process more automatic. So let's say I am interested in what are all the, without having to read them through with this tedious process of having to read all my 10 interviews. I would like to just have a fast insight, a fast impression of what are the most discussed terms in my interviews. I could also create a word cloud on it and see what the terms are that were mentioned most frequently by my interview partners. And you can simply do that by right-clicking on a folder or one specific document. But now I would like to look at all my interviews together. So I just did that with the folder. And well, it gives me it gives me a cloud that looks quite messy. So I can see there are some topics here. So it talks about family, about working. I can make this a bit more readable by applying a stop list. So I can have different lists here. I could have you can have your own lists, or you can also download some from our website if you would like to, and you can upload that here in your project. So let's see. I can see that they are talking about. I don't have any stop lists at the moment, but you can easily find some on our website. But here we can also see some information already. So I can see what's interesting, that they are very often talking about time. So apparently time management is something that could be a topic here in my work-life balance project. So what I could do is I could right-click on this term time and auto-code that with a new code. So what happens here is MAXQDA now creates a new code, which is called time, assigns it a memo. So it tells me that this is a code that was created automatically. So this is an auto code, and it codes any places where the term time appears. I could also edit a color. I would highly recommend you to use these colors also to differentiate between your codes that you created manually, but also the codes that were created automatically, as that is an important information as well. And if I now hit OK, MAXQDA will ask me what is it that I would like to code exactly. I would like to code the sentences for this case, but I could also code multiple sentences, only the search item, or entire paragraphs if I wish to do so. I will just hit autocode now. And as I can see, MAXQDA now auto-coded these segments for me. So entire sentences everywhere where the term time appeared. So that is something that would make my coding process faster, as now I can go ahead and if I double click on it, then it gives me a window where I can now read what my interview partners are telling me about their time. I can not only autocode by using this word cloud feature, but I could also autocode based on a text search if I would like to do so. Now we have some codes. We can not only work with our codes in text, but we can also use it for the other sorts of documents what we imported. So for example, if we have a video data, we can also code here directly on the video. So even if we don't have a transcript. So if I am listening to this interview and I realize that they are also starting out talking about their typical workday, I could simply add my code typical workday here. I can also code my images. Here I can just, we can see two people who are also working. So we can also highlight this and code as this is something that has to do with working. So again, record this in our code working. So you can use this coding very flexibly in all sorts of different document types. And now that we have some codes, we could also go ahead and start organizing that. So we could have multiple layers of multiple levels of code. We can have subcodes. We can have parent codes as well. So something what we could do now is to start also categorizing our codes and see that we have we have the category work here. So we have something, we have some segments mentioning someone's typical workday. We have some other segments on working. We could now summarize them together in a higher level code work. And by simply drag and dropping our other codes here, we could then make them to be we could now make them to be a subcode of the parent code work. If I am changing the color of one of these codes, then I can also choose to change it automatically for its subcodes as well, so that I have a good overview of them. It is also possible to import codes. So if I would like to, instead of working with codes that I'm creating inductively from my material, what I just did now by reading and just slowly creating new codes, I could also import an entire code system. So maybe I would like to work with deductive categories that I developed based on the literature. I could also import them from an Excel sheet, or from another MAXQDA project. So maybe you have worked on a similar topic before, and now you would like to use your existing coding for this new project. You could also do that. So I would like to now switch to another. I would like to now switch to another project which already has way more coded segments in that. So in order to show you what the third phase of your thesis could be, of now coming to develop research questions based on the coding and note-taking work what you did before. So let me just show that to you on the basis of our example projects and of the work-life balance example project. And that is a project where I am showing you the documents from just now, but that is also available to you. So if you are working with MAXQDA, even if you have the trial version downloaded, these projects are available to you to just try out the functionalities of MAXQDA and experiment a little bit around. So as you can see here, I have a bunch of different information. So not only text documents, but I also have a focus group interview, for example, which is a structured interview that is already pre-coded with the speakers, so that I can differentiate when I'm analyzing between the different speakers that are talking in this interview. Here I have the video interview with which I just showed you, but I also have images that are coded more here in this interview. I have websites that were picked with the MAXQDA web picker, which I mentioned to you earlier. So this would be the format of how you could get a website in if you are planning to analyze that. Here we also have some literature data. We have the full text, but also the bibliographic information on that, so that I have some additional information on the author. I have the abstracts of these articles. I also have an entire survey that is pre-coded with the open-ended survey questions. And what I also wanted to show you, which I briefly mentioned before, that you can also work on social media data here. And I have some examples for Twitter data. And the way how you can import Twitter data here in MAXQDA that looks like this, so that you can import tweets as a table format, and then you can really import them in bulk up to 1,000 pieces in a table like this, where you can see the tweet, you can see the hashtags, and you can see the authors. You can have more informations on the engagements of the followers of the authors, so that you can also do a social media you can also do a social media analysis. You can have the same, and you can have the same for YouTube comments as well. So MAXQDA is really, really flexible when it comes to working with different types of data. So let me just get back to our question of how we can now start developing our research questions based on all these data that we have collected, and then started coding and exploring in MAXQDA. As you can see, this is already a coded project. We have a much bigger and much more differentiated code system here as well. And just a little tip for you. So we have a thematic code system here. So we have codes talking about work situation, about the amount of hours they are working, about their work-life balance, about what our respondents were wishing for their futures, etc. But what we could also do is we could reorganize this code system based on your thesis chapters. So if you know that these specific codes, these specific themes are relevant for the segments of your thesis, for different sections of your thesis, then you could also create codes that are maybe called literature review. And they are called methods and findings, etc. And then you could reorganize these codes under your chapters, and then when you are exporting your findings, when you are making a report, you can also get them out. In the order how you are planning to include them. It of course you have to think about how it makes sense from your methodological point of view. So if you are of course only working with thematic codes, then it makes sense to have them all together, to have a code system which maybe only includes your thematic codes for your findings section, or for your analysis. But I wanted to show you that it is a very, very flexible system, where you could start thinking about having maybe different subsections of your code system, where you have a separate code system for your findings section, where you have a separate code system for your literature analysis as well. So you could also have different sorts of categories of coding belonging to these subcodes. So that's I think that having this hierarchical code system also makes it easy to organize your findings following the logic of your writing later on. And this another tool that is very, very helpful for your writing are memos. And these memos I already mentioned to you. So those are these colorful sticky notes that we can see all around the project, and we can have them on folders, as we just mentioned before. And here I have one which is already filled out with more information on the entire group of documents. So I have the interview questions here as well. And another thing what you could use that for is for creating a case summary and the document summary. So you could talk about the case of creating this interview and of this interview as well. So perhaps some meta information on it. But you could also create a document summary after having read and assessed this document. And the same goes for codes as well. So here you can also go ahead and structure this information so that you have a code definition, you have a code example, so that you have the rule that applies to the entire code. But then you could also have, as a second step, add your insights on what does the category entails, how can we summarize everything that we put into this category. And for this process of summarizing the results of what you can see in one code, there are multiple tools in MAXQDA what you can use for that. So one would be the retrieve segments window, which we closed at the beginning. Let me just get back to that very quickly. So here, what we could do, this window works with the logic of activation, meaning that you are sort of setting a filter. So you are activating some sort of documents that you are actively want to work on, and you are setting a filter for them. So let's say I would like to look at what my interview partners here are telling me about the amount of their hours in order to write that summary. I could activate all my interview partners from Berlin, and then I could activate my amount of hours code. And here now in the retrieve segments window, I can read all that. I can summarize this information, and I can read all that, and then I could open the document memo and go ahead and summarize this information. So that would be one way to do that. But there is another very useful tool that is called the summary grid. And here I could go through and read what every single respondents of mine are saying about this specific code, and that gives me a handy list of the coded segments. So every segments in that document that were coded with that code. But here on the right hand, it also gives me a writing tool where I can go ahead and summarize this information using my own words. And here it also allows me to display the code memo and then put the code summary right there. So this summary grid is another way to start developing our analytical memos. And then I would like to give you show you another tool which is very important, which is very useful when you are developing your research question, and that is the question themes and theories window. You can find that window here in the analysis tab called question themes and theories QTT. And if you open it, that gives you a workspace called worksheet. And this worksheet allows you to summarize information on one specific sub-question or one specific topic of your analysis. You can also have multiple worksheets in one project. So let's say you are talking about different sub-questions. So here I have one on work-life balance and cognitive well-being, talking about how the separation of work and free time contribute to cognitive well-being. But I could easily create a second worksheet which maybe talks about balancing work and family. So I could give this the name of that. This is about work and family, and we are talking about balancing work and family. And I could also record a research question. I highly recommend you to fill that out so that you know how you are that also forces you to think a bit about what you are planning to accomplish by gathering information there in that workspace. And the very great thing about this window is that you can collect all sorts of different information here. So you could collect codes that are relevant to your topic. You could collect important segments, the summary tables, what we just talked about, the memos, but also visualizations, which I will get back to in a second. So let us proceed to that visualization about this analysis, to the first to the fourth step, what you could make to write your thesis with MAXQDA. And for that, I would like to show you how you can visualize your data and how you can visually analyze that. And we have multiple ways here in MAXQDA. So one thing what we could do is we could create a document portrait. And that is a handy way to get an overview of how one of our interviews looks like, to get like sorts of a bird's eye on a specific document what we have. And here we have a portrait of that document where the different coded segments are represented with their code color. So this is where you can see that the code colors come in handy. And we can read this document portrait by referring to our code system and looking at the different colors that we assigned. And we can see that our work situation colors are the orange ones, but our work-life balance are the blue ones. And then we have some negative codes there that are here we have some satisfaction codes, and we have some negative codes that are red, and we have some positive green codes. So we can see that this document is mostly positive. So we have more. We can see a lot of green color here. We can see that he talks a lot about his typical work day and about his work-life balance. And then he hardly ever talks about wishes for the future, which are these turquoise colored topics. So that would be sort of a quick view on how the flow of the topics was in a particular document without having to go ahead and read that. And we can of course have multiple documents like this and compare them. And we have another way of comparing our documents, and that would be the code matrix browser. Let me show you how that allows you to make a comparison between your different documents. And in order to do so, I will just quickly undo my organization of the code system, which I did before, and I would like to compare my documents based on what they told me about their work situation and their work-life balance. And I would like to make a comparison between my Berlin documents. So I will activate them by clicking on these gray dots and using this logic of filtering. And I will now start a code matrix browser for only the activated documents and codes. And then I get this display where I can see my documents as columns, and I can see my codes as rows. And here, the size of these nodes corresponds to the frequency of how often my interview partners are talking about this topic. So here, right at the bat, we can see that Dan and Selim are very dominantly talking about friends and family. So this is the most dominant topic in their interviews, and they talk about this topic way more than my other interview partners, Chris, Riley, or Matthew. So now, right off the bat, I can see that friends and family is something that is very, very important to these two interview partners. I can switch these views to look at also the number of segments so that I can also have a better comparison between them and quantize this information. And the great thing about this window is that this is interactive. So if I click on one of these numbers, then here the 7 segments which I just clicked on will automatically open up in my retrieve segments window. So I not only have the information that, well, he talks about that a lot, but I can also see what did he tell me on this topic, what did he tell me about this topic. And I think that this retrieve segments window is really a good way to find information in MAXQDA and use for your use throughout your analysis. You can also populate it in very, very many different ways. So not only by using these visual tools that I showed you before, but also with the activation process. And for this logic of activation, you could even use document variables that are attributes that are assigned to one of your documents. So let's say you are interested in uh, only information from those people without any children. You could go ahead and activate only them. Then we can see only some of my interview partners turned red, so those without any children, and then we could see what this group told us about the specific team, maybe about the amount of hours what they are working. So you could this activation process is very flexible, and you could use that for any sorts of retrievals. Then I would like to now proceed and show you how you can gather these insights together. And for that, I think, of course, this retrieve segments window is very important. So after you collected this information in many different activations, and you are performing searches and retrievals and finding information, you can always export them here from this retrieve segments window, and or continue analyzing it from here. You could create go ahead and recode them. You could go ahead and create a matrix based on that, or a word cloud based on that, and continue working with this information. You could even report them by printing them out, or exporting them as a Word or in an Excel sheet. But I think another document which comes into, or another feature that comes into play when gathering insights is the question themes and theories window, which I quickly showed you before. And here you can collect all sorts of different elements, also your visualizations or your concept map, what you are creating and what you are collecting. And the great thing about this is that you are not only gathering these insights, but you also have the option to write about them. So wherever you are creating a map, wherever you are creating a visualization, like a code matrix browser, what we did before, you could then also write your thoughts on that, and you could even start the writing process here in MAXQDA, where this is connected to your data as well. And then when it comes to the final step of your analysis, to the reporting step, then this retrieve segments window comes in handy as well, because you can this question themes and theories window comes very handy as well, because then you can go ahead and export that. So you could create based on all of these information you gathered, all of these comments what you made. You could then create a Word document and go ahead and use that as the basis of your writing. There are also a number of different report options here. You could also create a report on your coded segments using the Smart Publisher. You could print your codebook out if you would like to maybe write your methodological section, and you are talking about how you develop your code system, how did you code it, how did you define your codes. Then you can print the entire codebook out. There are a lot of disciplines that also require you to then attach this codebook as an attachment to your thesis. But you can also have reports on other features, on your coded segments, on your codes, on your summaries as well. So this is how you can work with MAXQDA when you are writing a thesis, how you can use MAXQDA again by collecting and importing your data. We have looked at the import features here. We looked at exploring your data by coding it, by taking memos, by making comments on your coded segments. Then we talked about developing your research questions by using memos and recording summaries, and also using the QTT window. We also talked about analyzing your data using visualizations and working with variables. And we talked about gathering your insights in the QTT, and then finally about reporting. So those were the 6 steps. And if you found this interesting and you would like to take a look and read how others are working with MAXQDA using these 6 steps, then I can highly recommend you to check out our websites. And we have a blog article on that where a student of cultural anthropology used these 6 steps on for writing his thesis. And he also has some interesting insights and explanations on how he proceeded on writing his dissertation with MAXQDA.